The US enjoys a vast military presence worldwide, and recently President Obama unveiled a new face to the war on terror, defending America's overseas policies. But there are more questions about the legal basis for this military activity when the US is fighting wars under the cover of military threats. Artis Giannichkian has this report.
President Obama, in his major national security speech this May, quoted James Madison saying no nation could preserve its freedom in the midst of continual warfare. At the very same time, the administration claims power to wage endless war across the globe. There was a Senate hearing this May revisiting the authorization for use of military force, which Congress enacted days after 9/11 attacks in 2001. At the hearing, Pentagon officials claimed that authorization gives the president power to wage endless war anywhere in the world, including Syria, Yemen, and the Congo. And when asked how long they predict this war on terror is going to last, they said, quote, from 10 to 20 years. And one way of understanding this is you say 10 to 20 years when you see no end in sight. Here's a clip from that hearing.
Do you agree with me that when it comes to international terrorism, we're talking about a worldwide struggle?
Absolutely, sir.
Would you agree with me the battlefield is wherever the enemy chooses to make it?
Yes, sir, from Boston to the Fatah.
I couldn't agree with you more. Do you agree with that, General?
Yes, sir, I agree that the enemy decides where the battlefield is.
So by the administration's definition, the world is a battlefield. With me today is Brian Becker with the Answer Coalition. Brian, thanks for joining me. Brian, you have President Obama saying in his national security speech that the U.S. is not engaged in a boundless war, and yet you have this vast military presence across the globe. Washington Post cited a senior administration official who said U.S. Special Operations Forces were active in 75 countries. To that, you add the drone strikes and new drone bases. Does it look like the U.S. is really seeking to limit itself in the use of military force?
No, in fact, the policy and the institutional policy is for the United States to not only be prepared for endless war, but to be engaged in all of the activities that would lead one to believe that they are in endless war. There's 1.3 million U.S. military personnel, 300 to 400,000 of them are overseas. There's 900 military bases. The United States spends not $525 billion, which is the Defense Department budget, but really about $1 trillion on warfare. That's greater than the next 16 nations combined. We see an integrated network of bases, now drone bases growing increasingly. This is to have a full spectrum domination using the military as the club.
The administration argues that all their military actions in the countries that the U.S. is not at war with are perfectly legal under the U.S. Congress's authorization for use of military force. That's their legal justification for continuing all these attacks. What about international law?
Well, international law has been shredded by the so-called global war on terrorism, or the authorization bill that allows the U.S. to invade any country, bomb any country, kill whoever it wants. The UN Charter is quite clear. The United States, like all other member nations of the United Nations, can only go to war, engage in military activity as an act of imminent self-defense. In other words, the defense from an imminent threat. But in fact, the United States, by arrogating to itself the right to war anywhere against anyone all the time, is clearly in violation of international law.
Well, President Obama says the administration does not violate anybody's sovereignty because it operates in consultation with the governments concerned. The whole population of Pakistan, their parliament, unanimously, vehemently opposed drone strikes, and yet they continue. So maybe the administration is in consultation with the government there, but certainly not the people.